Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. This is Overland Weekly, episode number 24. I'm your host. My name is Davey, and once again, this show is on the road. If you hadn't noticed, we are on location at the world-famous BleepinJeep headquarters. The man sitting next to me is the brains behind all the wrenches and cameras and chaos here at the shop, BleepinJeep Matt. Matt, thank you for letting us come out and have this conversation.
Yeah, thanks for coming all the way out here to hang out.
Absolutely. So we've got up to speed on the trailer project here. Now, you were telling me that you've got a potential name. Do you want to put that out there now for the trailer?
Yeah, so we had a lot bouncing around. Goosebumps was one of them, but I wanted to do it something about the goose because it's a gooseneck trailer. I think we've landed on Silly Goose.
Silly Goose. I think that's it suits.
It's fitting. It's very silly.
It fits the project. All right. So long before you were making the Silly Goose, let's rewind 15 years here.
Okay.
You were, to my understanding, you had your XJ. You needed to replace some ball joints. You're looking on YouTube for a video or some help on replacing those ball joints, and there wasn't anything good there. Is that kind of the origin of what those first how-to XJ ball joint series came from?
It is. So this was 15 years ago, and you got to remember YouTube was in its early infancy. People back then, 15 years ago, used flip phones. Like the smartphone wasn't even invented yet. So a lot of the footage, as you can imagine, was shot on a flip phone. Is very grainy, very bad, very poorly lit. And I was looking for how to change my ball joints, and I thought, well, none of this is good. At the time, I was a wedding photographer, and I had, all the camera equipment. I wasn't that knowledgeable on Jeeps, but I figured if I can do it, at least I can film it good with good lighting, and teach people how to do it. And that's how BleepinJeep started.
But there was no, you said YouTube was in its infancy. There was no revenue opportunities or monetization at that point.
They were just rolling
just
out.
Starting
it wasn't, not anybody could do it. So you had to apply.
Okay.
And very, very few people got accepted.
And but you were really doing it just to help out the next guy. Was that the idea?
Yeah. I just wanted to, I was a stay-at-home dad, and I was doing weddings on the weekend, so I had a lot of time on my hands, and I just filled my time with making videos and posting them to YouTube, I guess.
Well, so and a lot of those early videos revolved around your Cherokee, around your XJ, and so that Jeep you had from age 16, is that right? That was your first car, and then many years you held on to it?
Yeah, Valentine's Day would have been 1998, I think. I bought that when I turned 16, and it was either that or a Bronco 2, and somehow I landed on the Jeep Cherokee. And I'm glad I did, because there's not that much aftermarket 4x4 support for a Bronco 2.
We would not be sitting here having a conversation about bleeping Bronco 2s. Yeah.
No, for sure.
When did the bleepin name come to be? Did you come up with that pretty early on?
Well, when I made that first video, I had to...
You had to have something?
I had to have a name, because I knew if I was going to continue with this, I would need some sort of name. So I asked the wife, and we went back and forth, and I thought, you know what? I'm always cussing at the Jeeps. They're always broken. They're not working, and I'm always working on them, wrenching on them. And what better name than BleepinJeep? And I picked it, within a matter of 10 minutes, and then here we are 15 years later, and it's stuck. That's
a good thing, because it's hard to change branding when you're halfway into something.
It is. We changed logos about 5 years ago, but even that was difficult.
Yeah. So you start making some of those early videos, and then how did you start to realize that there was this community out there? Was it through the comments in the videos early on? I mean, you're getting views, but then you start getting people that are saying, well, hey, can you make a video on this, or can you show me how to do that, or should I buy an XJ for my kid this?
Yeah, at first there wasn't a lot of comments, so, but I think for the most part, I was making these videos even for myself, like as kind of, I wanted to be, you know, that Shilton book everybody had years ago. It was you know, how to do this, how to do that.
Yeah.
I wanted to be the video version of the Shilton book.
Okay.
And even now, I'll still go back and watch my own videos sometimes because I forgot, you know, how to do something, especially when it comes to wiring or diagnostics. That stuff is more like, it's more like the YouTube Shilton BleepinJeep manual.
So you're like the rest of us, that when we start tearing something apart, you make that video to yourself on your phone that goes, this plug went there, this plug went there.
Right. Yeah, it was kind of notes for myself. And then eventually, yeah, people were like, hey, that's really good. Can you make one on this? And can you make one on an alternator? And so I just started doing more and more of the how-to aspect of Jeep Cherokees.
And then it evolved from just these kind of how-to videos into, I'll call it this like story adventure kind of, you know, you started bringing, what's the word? I don't want to say theatrics, but you started bringing this humor to the videos and your little skits and that kind of thing. When did you realize, okay, maybe people like more than just the actual technical how-to of it?
Well, I knew early on that I was pretty boring. I was very boring. My tone is very monotonous. People call me the Mr. Rogers of the Jeep world. And I knew that I had to be silly or entertaining or do something dumb to kind of keep the audience's attention. So a lot of those early videos, I was just wearing goofy hats or something to get comments. And what's weird, the weirdest part is when you'd make a video wearing something really ridiculous and nobody would say anything. Then you thought, do they think I wear that all the time?
Just what do you wear to Walmart? Yeah.
But no, I tried to keep it entertaining because I knew even the people that were just coming for how-to videos, if they were entertained, maybe they'd stick around and watch another one.
Right. Or they wouldn't fast forward to the part they needed. They might watch the whole thing through, which is kind of important in the YouTube world.
Nowadays. It is,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. So did you have to start kind of defining a balancing act between the wrenching and the storytelling?
Yeah, it took a long time for that to happen, but basically once the algorithm kicked in, things really changed a lot, and you needed to keep the viewer hooked for the entire video rather than just getting them to click on the video. And I really blame it on the algorithm, having to change my style from just how-tos to more entertainment. If you look at very successful off-road channels now, like Matt's Off-Road Recovery, they're not doing how-tos, they're more entertaining people.
Yes, true.
And if you look at some of the how-to in the off-road space, how-to only, they're not getting enough views maybe to make a living.
And there's some really good info there that doesn't get promoted because it doesn't have the storytelling behind it. Yeah.
So now what I try to do is do a project, like, you know, the one that's behind us, and I will teach people as we're building the project. So you get both. The negative, the downside to that is it's not very searchable, right? Because let's say, you know, I show a little welding tip or trick in the middle of this trailer that we're building. It might just be 5 minutes, whereas the whole video is an hour long. Right. You can't really search that through YouTube.
Do you spend a lot of time nowadays, present day, in the analytics of YouTube at looking at your subscriber count and your churn and who's come and gone and what videos people are retaining and kind of adapt from that data?
I don't, because I feel like that's a right brain thing to do, and I'm a left brain person. Like if you have a Microsoft computer, maybe you're looking at the data, but I'm an Apple person, so it just goes right over my head. I just try to make entertaining stuff.
Fair enough. I'm an Apple and a data guy, so I don't know what that says about,
Oh, no.
about me. Yeah. Another thing I noticed, Matt, and I think you've done this from early on, is you were never afraid, maybe afraid's not the right word, but you were never hesitant to show failures. This was a bad weld, or I didn't think about this right. This suspension didn't work out I'd hoped. And I think there's a lot of that gets edited out in a lot of YouTube content nowadays. Is that a choice to kind of retain that authenticity with the audience?
Yeah, I think it's a part of my dry humor is just to keep those failures in so that people will laugh at me because they think I'm dumb. But it also creates a connection with the audience because they make mistakes too. And they like the fact that I don't edit that stuff out. This isn't a TV show. I'm just a guy in a garage doing stupid stuff that I like to do. And we all make mistakes, and it's typical human behavior.
Yeah. If you're not making mistakes building trucks, then you're not really building trucks. I mean, that's the end of it. Talk a bit about, if you will, kind of how this, what I believe is obviously a family business, has evolved, right? So even from the early days, you had your wife, you had your kids, they're in the shop, they're in and out of shots. As the channel has grown, has it evolved more into is it a lifestyle? Is the family business always BleepinJeep, or are you able to kind of disconnect from that?
Well, I've always tried to separate business from my home life. And when the kids were younger, I was very private about showing them in the videos.
Sure.
They didn't show up a lot in the videos because I wanted them to have their privacy, and I didn't want to try to make money off of them. But now my kids are grown. My youngest is moving out in a couple weeks, actually. So things are evolving. But my son now is working at a Jeep dealership.
Oh, cool.
Selling Jeeps, and he never did like to wrench a lot, but it's interesting and fun now watching him kind of get into the car market, even though it's not building Jeeps. He's selling Jeeps.
He's found his passion in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And Ella, I got her down here a lot welding and stuff, and she enjoyed that, but she doesn't like to get dirty either. But I let them do their own thing. But I tried to always keep it where my cutoff is about 6:30. If I'm still out in the shop at 6:30, I try to put everything down and go in and spend family time. But then the wife started, Hope, my wife, she started bringing out lunches whenever Josh started working here. Shortly after, she came here full time, and she started bringing out lunches. And one day we caught that on video just spontaneously, and for whatever reason, people loved that. And so we started putting her in there more and more. What people don't realize is that she brings lunch down 5 days a week, but we only video it maybe once every 2 weeks.
Otherwise, the lunch lady has always been there, just wasn't always on camera.
Yeah, she's always been there ever since she was working for BleepinJeep. She was a nurse previously, but she enjoys it. She finds that as part of her job, right? It's part of her job, but she enjoys it as well, and she likes to take care of us. But what people don't realize is that if we were to actually show it, since a lot of our videos take place over 2 weeks and we edit that down into maybe 30 minutes, if we were to actually video her every time she came in, we'd be having lunch every 30 seconds.
Well, maybe she needs her own channel just on the lunch lady.
She does. I think she does.
There you go. What about, I remember in some earlier videos, and I guess the kids were younger, and they didn't really maybe get what you did or think that what Dad did was cool. Has that changed? Do they look at this and go, okay, this is not what most dads go do every day. This is actually pretty awesome.
Yes and no. So for my son, Austin, when he started selling Jeeps, both kids, teenagers, they don't think you're cool no matter what. Even if you're like an A-list movie star, they're just like, oh, you're. But my son, when he started selling Jeeps, he would mention to some of these Jeep buyers that his dad was a YouTuber, BleepinJeep, and then that would create a conversation. A lot of people knew who I was, and I feel like since that happened, he really appreciates what I do more, and he'll even bring it up on purpose now, maybe to get that sale or whatever.
I see, yeah.
For Ella, though, no, she still thinks I'm a big dork. Has no ambitions. I tried to get her for the longest time to do something in social media or even be my editor, learn how to edit. But she just thinks I'm a big dork.
What does she tell her friends when they ask, where does your dad work? What do they call it?
I'm sure they say YouTuber, I guess. Yeah. I'm not really sure. All of her friends seem to have found out over the years what I do. And it's kind of weird. You'll go to the football games and somebody will say hi and you don't really know who they are, but they're like, you're Ella's dad, like the YouTuber.
They know,
yeah.
Let's shift gears a little bit, Matt, and talk about, let's just talk about the XJ as a platform. Like you said, luckily you didn't buy that Bronco 2, so you kind of wandered into the Cherokee life. But man, you talk about a platform that has not only kind of had longevity, but I think has seen this resurgence in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, the marketplace prices don't lie. What do you think it is about that platform that people that are older, that are our age, and now teenagers are still searching out Cherokees?
Well, for one, they were affordable. They made 3 million of them. There's not quite as many around anymore because of the cash for clunkers. During COVID, a lot of them went way up in value, and they're starting to come down now, I think, is the reason why there's been a resurgence in the last 4 years. After COVID, the prices started going back down where people could afford them again. But it's just a really good platform. And if you watch somebody like Dex Jeeps or Dex J's now, he'll show you how you can take one of these, and all you have to do is, if you don't go above 32-inch tires and you have an 8 1/4 rear end, you can thrash the heck out of it and it won't break.
He is living proof of that.
Right?
Yeah.
So you just do a couple modifications to them and they're really good off-road vehicles. They're unibody, and I think a lot of that, they flex in the body, so you get a little bit of extra flex there.
And the rustier they get, the more they flex.
Without having to do any lift, you get flex out of the body.
Well, you've had several kind of, your builds have evolved, right, as the channel has evolved. So you've got Hope Floats, the Zombie Jeep. Of course, the Holy Grail was its own version of craziness. But, you said, I think, when you, back to 16-year-old you'd put like a 2-inch lift kit or something on that Cherokee, the first thing you did, and you ran some dirt roads and you're like, yeah, I'm wheeling. This is where it's at. And now you're on a whole different plane with the wheeling and with the builds. Do you think if the channel hadn't grown, would you have grown? Would the projects have grown, or did it just all naturally evolve together?
It's who you hang out with, right? So when
isn't that the truth?
Yeah. When I was in Texas, I had 36-inch tires on a 6.5-inch lift, and man, I thought I was hot stuff, right? I had this really beautiful Jeep with the snorkel on the side. I had an immaculate paint job, chrome everywhere, and I came here and I got involved with East Tennessee 4-Wheel Drive Club. And they, had 40s, which at the time was huge. And I started wheeling with them. And the terrain here is a lot different. There's a lot more trees.
Very different.
A lot more mud. And eventually that Jeep that was chromed out turned into a raisin. And I had to start upgrading. So it's really who you hang out with. And I was hanging out with those guys who were also upgrading from 40s to 43s at the time. And so I had to upgrade from 36s to 39s. And then after that to 40s, then to 43s. And I think it's just not only who you hang out with, but the type of terrain that you're involved with. So out in California, maybe a 35-inch tire locked front and rear, California and Utah would take you 90% of everywhere.
Sure.
Here, it's a lot different. You go to somewhere like AOP, Adventure Off-Road Park, and if you've got 35s, you're not going anywhere.
No, not anymore. 15 years ago, it was different, but those trails are wallered out now.
Even the main trail getting up into the park. We were there a couple weeks ago, and some guy on 40s was getting stuck on the main trail. So a lot of it has to do with where you're at too, I believe.
Well, you've gotten to travel and wheel in a lot of parts of the country now. Being an East Coast guy and going West Coast, we always say this show is a little bit East Coast biased because we're over here. But do you think the people that are on their 35s and on the just wheeling on the West Coast understand just how nasty this East Coast terrain can really be?
No, there's no way to. You have to experience it unless they've been over here, which there's not a lot of reason for them to come east because there's so much wheeling opportunities out west.
Well, that's fair, but it's a different kind, as you know. We got 77,000 acres right here at Windrock.
Yes, it's great wheeling out here. I love this kind of wheeling more than any kind of wheeling, but it's different.
Yeah. It's funny, you were talking about you go from a 40 to a 43. Like, it's a never-ending cycle, right? So I just did the 35 to 37s upgrade, and it's like, yeah, but now 40s are the new 37 and 43s are the new 40, and it's like, it just, where do we end? So
I feel like 43 is where it ends.
Well,
there's not many.
It kind of has to, because there's not a whole lot past that.
There's not many people that have bigger tires than 43s, and I think at that point they start getting so heavy that it becomes. It goes the other direction. It starts going downhill.
Yeah.
So hopefully 43s is where it stops.
Yeah. They start getting real expensive too.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your Project Shipwreck.
Okay.
All right. So that was a Grand Cherokee build. Mm-hmm. And there seems to be this thing that every time you build a Grand Cherokee, it ends up destroyed. Is that intentional?
Well, I'm a Cherokee lover. So the Grand Cherokee, everybody wanted me to build a Grand Cherokee. And so the very first Grand Cherokee that I built was the Orvis Edition Grand Cherokee. And I just slightly built it, and then we destroyed it on purpose. I was kind of doing the, what's that guy that has the YouTube channel that destroys all of his vehicles?
Oh, yeah.
I was kind of doing that. And it worked at the time. I got like 500,000 views on it.
Yeah.
But we did a collaboration with that video with Jason from Engineering Explained. And what we ended up doing was strapping a strap around the engine and tying the other end of that strap to a tree. This was a really long strap, mind you. It was like 300 feet long, 12 inches wide. It was like a 50,000 tons. I don't know. It was a huge strap. And the science behind it, quote, science, was to see if I could pull the engine out of the rear of the Jeep. So Jason's job was to do the math to see if the bolts would break and if that engine would come out. But we, basically we tied a brick around the gas pedal and just shot it out into the field. And when it hit the end of that strap, we tried to see what would happen, and it was catastrophic.
Yeah.
Do I need to say it over? I don't remember what I said.
Well, we were talking about Project Shipwreck. We were talking about you destroying all Grand Cherokees, and that there was a fair amount of, I don't know if it was conspiracy or criticism or both in the comments around your hatred for Grand Cherokees, because they seem to end up destroyed.
Yeah, every time I mean, I'm a Cherokee lover, so what can I say? You got to destroy the Grand Cherokees because they think they're way grander than the Cherokees.
And the Cherokees. As the channel's grown, you have grown this community, right? That's what I think you'd call it, this BleepinJeep community. And sure. You talked about that at one point in a video where you, I think you were on a trail in a Cherokee and you snapped a rear axle and you had a bunch of folks that you didn't know jump in, like grab a 2x4 and strap the axle in and get you off the trail. And you were like, that's kind of when I realized, like, there's a whole community here. It's more than just the video thing. Talk about kind of how that's grown and how the relationship with your viewers has evolved.
Yeah, so that was the origin story. I was 16 at the time, so I actually had the wife in the background. The wife now was in the back of the Jeep, and all these people we broke, and these people came out and out of the woods basically and fixed.
So this was pre-BleepinJeep. This is when you just learned about kind of the Jeep community.
Yeah, this
was
way before BleepinJeep, and
Gotcha.
These people came out of the woods and fixed the Jeep, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. And it was then that I realized that there was a community around Jeepers, and so I got involved with my local club, and those guys were really nice. It seems like everybody in the Jeep community is really nice, except for those guys on Facebook. But for the most part, everybody is a good bunch of people. The Jeep community as a whole is a great bunch of people, and typically, if you break down in any other vehicle on the side of the road, people will just keep going. But if you're in a Jeep and another Jeep passes,
sure,
there's more likelihood that they're going to stop. And everybody knows about the Jeep wave when you're in a Toyota, which I have a lot of Toyotas too. But
he does. I've seen him.
I feel like when you're in a Toyota and I pass another Toyota, I wave and they don't wave. They don't respond back. A lot of times you drive a Toyota.
As a Land Cruiser owner, if I pass another cruiser and you don't wave back, that hurts. I know that's a mall crawler at that point. So,
but even with even stock Jeeps will wave at other stock Jeeps.
That's true. The Jeep community is overly friendly with their waving, consistent with their waving. I do think what you said is true of the off-road community in general, especially in this part of the country, as far as folks willing to lend a hand. You see that every time you're on the trail. I mean, guys almost fighting each other to be the guy that helps the stranger, change the tire or whatever it is.
I think that must be a Southern attitude, because I've been in other places wheeling and they're just like, all right, well, I hope you're good. Bye.
He said it, not me, but yeah, I concur. Let's talk about kind of some of the different personalities, because we've gone from the early days of you and your ball joints, and then you've had multiple people kind of come and go and come back to the channel. Josh, Jeremy, Tim, Tyler, Nate, others. How did that kind of come to be, and how did you realize, okay, I can bring in these others' perspectives, other ways of telling stories, and it still engages with the same audience?
It's hard, especially the way that YouTube works now. But in the beginning, I was making videos, and I was making maybe 1 or 2 a month, maybe 1 a week, and people wanted more. They wanted more and more and more and more. And so I thought, well, how can I create more content without overburdening myself and still having time with my family? And I thought, well, I already have all these followers, and there's really good people out there who have channels. They just haven't found the audience.
Okay.
And I started reaching out to them, and I said, hey, we've got at the time maybe 20,000, 50,000 subscribers already here waiting for content. And would you like to join the BleepinJeep channel and just be a content creator. I call them content creators. And I think Tim and Tyler were the first two. And they started making content, and it takes a little bit, right? You bring somebody new to the channel, and these people lived in other parts of the country, so it wasn't like they were working in my shop. They were working in their own garage on their own projects, and when you bring people in like that, it takes a little bit for your audience to like them. At first they hate them, and then they get used to them, and then they deal with them, and then they end up liking them eventually. And so I just found people didn't really understand why I was doing that, but in my eyes, it was kind of like I was a channel, like not a YouTube channel, like a TV channel, like NBC.
Sure.
And I had different programming on from 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 8 to 9.
Right.
We had different programming, and those people were different presenters, and I was just the TV channel that was showcasing them.
There again.
Oh no!
Dang it! All right. So we're fighting a little technical challenge with the camera overheating, but
we'll just put the BleepinJeep logo there every time the camera goes out.
I like that. That'll be about the third time that we'll need to put the logo up. But yeah, you were talking about how you viewed the BleepinJeep channel as kind of like a television channel, and then you had these slots to fill with different shows.
Yeah, my goal originally was to have 7 content creators and have a video a day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I only got 2, 3 a week at one point, and it was still stressful. And then, one person leaves, and then the people still wanted 3 videos a week. So I'm making 2 videos a week, and eventually it just became too much.
Now, were you editing what the footage they would send you?
No.
Okay, so it was coming ready to go, but still.
Yeah, you still needed to create thumbnails and titles sometimes, and all the descriptions, and upload it and schedule it, and do the social media aspect of promoting the video before it drops on Facebook and Instagram. It's still a lot.
We hadn't really talked about the social media portion. Were you early on the bandwagon with that as far as the channel, or were you just purely going off YouTube at the beginning?
I've always been a YouTube channel mainly. I think Facebook and Instagram followed.
Okay.
I still don't have nearly as big a following on either.
It's very difficult to move people from short form to long form content, or the other way around. It's the same audience, but for whatever reason, I've heard a lot of content creators say it's difficult to engage them on both platforms.
I hate with a passion short form content and vertical content, because now you got to shoot everything horizontal for YouTube, and then you got to flip it and do it again for vertical for Instagram and Facebook.
Or you got to shoot it in some super high res that you can crop down.
Yeah, and Facebook's like wants kind of square, and then Instagram wants tall 16 by 9, and then YouTube wants 9 by 16, and it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Well, on the YouTube front, so like you said, when you were coming into it, they were just starting to get into monetization. You had to be invited into the program. But then monetization became a big thing, and there was good money in it, and everybody rushed to it. And then there was the adpocalypse on YouTube, and overnight everything changed. What was that like? Because I imagine you were on a pretty good roll growing the channel, and you think you're planning ahead, and then you realize, well, we're still playing in YouTube's sandbox, and they make the rules. So
I think the adpocalypse didn't really affect me that much. It was the algorithm change that affected me the most.
Okay.
But luckily we have our eggs in more than one basket, so it's not just YouTube ad revenue that we rely on. That's just one small portion of it. But as an ad creator, it's just like investing. You need to make sure that all your eggs are not in one basket. So if YouTube fails or Facebook fails, Instagram, TikTok fails, you still have something to rely on. Because at this point, I work for BleepinJeep. My wife works for BleepinJeep. Josh works for BleepinJeep. We have a editor, a video editor that works for BleepinJeep. Yeah. There's a lot of people relying on that income source.
That's a lot of, just hearing you say it out loud, that's a lot of weight on your shoulders. How do you, in a lot of small business owners, no matter what the business is, struggle with this, but how do you get up every day and say, I need a fresh set of ideas, and, kind of, do you have things you do to help prevent the burnout that's associated with content creating?
There's always going to be burnout, but I think what I do, and a lot of times it prevents my burnout, is I sit back and I think to myself, if I retired today, what would I do with my time once I'm retired? And the answer has always been, I'll build really cool Jeeps. So the only thing that I have to do is basically pretend I'm retired, but I also have to film it.
Okay.
So that's how I get out of my burnout, right? I just make I have these really cool ideas and projects in my brain bouncing around. And then one day I tell Josh, I'm like, hey, we're going to build this crazy trailer that can do a complete 360 around the Jeep. And he's like, what? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And we make that happen. And I would still do that if I was retired. I just have to film it and edit it now.
So BleepinJeep is really just an old guy piddling around the garage, but you've got cameras running.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it is a lot of work to film it and explain to the audience, what's happening. But it's not so much that I would, burn out and stop doing it. If I ever burned out, I would just pivot and start doing something that I like more. But at this point, I still like building Jeeps.
How long into it? You mentioned at the beginning that you were doing wedding photography and videography, I assume, before when you started the channel. How long were you doing that as the day job when you were starting to make videos before it was full time to BleepinJeep?
So I started BleepinJeep in 2010, and I went full time BleepinJeep in 2015.
Okay.
So it took 5 years.
5 years of doing both.
To do both, yeah. And then one day I was like, you know what? I hate photographing weddings because my stomach would just get in knots before, like on Friday.
You'd get nervous about the gig?
I would get so nervous because just like the camera issues you're having,
right? If
you have those kind of camera issues during a wedding,
oh yeah,
you're going to get sued. So, you had to have cameras, you had to have backup cameras, backup lenses, backup batteries, and then sometimes a card would go bad and you would lose footage.
Sure.
And so there was so much riding on that you get that perfect shot. And like when they go to kiss for the first time during the wedding, if you miss that, you can't miss that. So I would just be all nervous. And finally I was like, I'm making more money now through BleepinJeep. I don't have to do this anymore.
I never realized wedding photography was such a high stress job until you describe it that way, and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You always have 2 cameras on your shoulder. And if that one goes down, you pivot around. And I was doing weddings before digital. So you had 36 shots and then you had to reload. There was no like buying a bigger CF card. Right. You had to reload the film, and that took a good 15 seconds, even if you're good at it. So it was very stressful.
Can you still do high-speed film reloads? Is it still muscle memory if I handed you a film camera now?
No, I don't think so.
Let's talk a little bit about the different collaborations, because that's something I think as a viewer that's been unique in YouTube versus traditional television production. You've done a few videos with Matt's Off-Road Recovery. You mentioned earlier You've done some videos with Ian Johnson, who was on the show a few weeks ago, and several others. What do you think about how this whole collaboration industry has evolved among content creators? Does it inspire you? Is it competitive? Because I mean, at the end of the day, you guys are kind of after the same eyeballs. So what's kind of the real goings on there?
I think it's very friendly on camera and very competitive off camera.
Okay.
But collaborations are just a part of it now. You kind of have to do collaborations, although I'm a very private person. I like to just work in my shop and be alone by myself and do my own thing. But collaborations are what introduce your audience to another audience, and then you grow your audience by their audience also reaching back out to you.
There's a mutual benefit.
Right. So it's very important, and I'll do it, but it's not my forte. I'm a very shy, quiet person.
Do you remember the first time either you reached out to somebody or somebody reached out to you and you were like, oh, this is weird, like I'm going to go do something with another channel now?
Yeah, I'll tell you this story. It was actually kind of funny because I was with my friend George in Utah, and we were filming for the Freedom Winch line, which I patented and invented, and we needed to get some shots of it, like in use.
Sure.
And we thought, what better place to take photos than in Sand Hollow, Utah, because we had both previously been wheeling there before. So we flew out there. We had the winch lines. We were taking pictures on these Jeeps, and we got done. And I said, hey, George, there's this new guy like coming around the YouTube, and I think he lives around here somewhere. And his name is Matt. Matt's off-road. And I said, George, do you want to go see him? And George said, nah, not interested. And I said, well, George, it might be good. Like we could do a little collaboration. Maybe we could show him the winch line or something. And he's like, nah. And finally I said, George, let's just go over there. And so I called him on the phone, and I got the receptionist or somebody, and I explained the situation. I said, hey, we're in town. This is Matt with BleepinJeep. And about 2 minutes later, I got a call back from Matt. And he's like, is this really BleepinJeep? You're in town? And I was like, I didn't even know who you are. I didn't know you knew who I was.
I see. Yeah.
And so we went over, and he was super friendly, super nice guy. And that's how I first met Matt's Off-Road. And that's the beginning of a huge collaboration. We've done so many videos together now.
Yeah. Yeah. So was the first time he came here and you guys were shooting those videos at Windrock, was that his first time coming east because of meeting you?
Yeah. And he went to the Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion.
Okay.
But it was because I was going to the Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion, and he called me and he's like, hey, is this an event we should attend? And I said, absolutely. It's one of the best events that I have all year round. And so he came out for that. And they kicked him out because he tried to bring a Corvair.
All right. Well, if you've just seen another BleepinJeep logo, it's because the camera's shut off again, and we have
all the BleepinJeep logos in there.
We have frozen kielbasa that Matt went and drug out of the freezer, sitting on top of the camera because for whatever reason it's not hot in here, but this camera thinks it's overheating.
I think that's going to work. Summer sausage for the win.
I think that's it. Yeah, this is a new hack. Yeah, when your camera's overheating. We were just talking about you and Matt from Matt's Off-Road, and that they kicked him out of the Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion because he brought the Corvair.
Yes, well, they didn't technically kick him out, but they kicked the Corvair out.
Okay,
because it's not a Jeep.
Yeah.
So this year, we built the Jag, the Jaguar, as people like to say. And so I'm not allowed to bring it, though. But I think I'm going to take it and park it at the very first parking spot, like the public parking spot.
Before you cross into their...
Right.
Yeah, their area. I like that. Well, we've got a big Toyota event coming up next month at Windrock, the Great Smoky Mountain Trail Ride, G-Smitter. and you're welcome to bring the Jag up if you want to crash the
All
Toyota
right.
party. We allow any make and model to register. It is a Toyota event, but you're welcome to bring any make and model because we are an inclusive community of Toyota owners.
I like that.
So, speaking of events, let's talk about some of the BleepinJeep events now. So, like the monkey ball crawl and this, you just did this 33-inch. What'd you call it?
Bleeper Heap Safari.
Heap
So
Safari,
it was
yeah.
the same week that the Easter Jeep Safari was.
Okay.
So I tried to
That's where
rhyme
you
it
got that.
with
Yeah.
the Bleeper Heap Safari, but nobody got the reference.
Yeah,
But
I didn't until you just told me. So.
basically what it was a 33-inch ride. And the idea was for anybody to be able to bring whatever they wanted as long as it was on 33-inch tires or smaller. And so I took my Scorpion crawler and put it on 33s on 20-inch rims, and it looked completely ridiculous because it typically
Yeah.
rides on 43s. And that was kind of the idea, is just to level the playing field.
Oh, it was
for
funny
everybody.
watching that thing search for traction on those little bitty tires. Yeah.
What's crazy is at that point, a little stock Jeep Cherokee basically outperforms a
That's
well-built
exactly right.
crawler just because of tire selection.
Yeah.
But so we've got that we did, and then coming up in, I think it's September, October, is our monkey ball crawl. We're going to put that on again. I think we've gone a couple years without doing it, but it's just a huge fan ride where everybody's welcome and it's free. We do food, we do a raffle, and we do trail rides and bonfire, live music, and just have a good time.
And where is that at?
At Windrock.
That's at Windrock too. Very cool. Have those grown? I'm sure they've grown over the years, but do you remember when you were planning your first event? Were you like, okay, I'm going to put this out there and we'll see how many people show up, kind of thing?
I was hesitant to do a first event. We did fan rides and stuff, and we do Patreon rides now, which are always fun. But the big event, the first monkey ball crawl, was actually limited to 25 rigs.
Okay.
Because I wanted to see how it went, like do a little test run. And those people loved it. And then we opened it up to everybody. And we typically would have 80 rigs, and we would have, double that for the amount of people, because a lot of people bring their spouses or kids or whatever.
And you have all different levels of rigs there?
Yeah, the problem with doing that is, let's say you have 80 rigs there and 160 people. A lot of them want to ride with BleepinJeep, but we have to split up into 8 groups, and maybe they don't get to ride with BleepinJeep for the entire weekend. But we try to separate people into groups that they would like to be in and not break things. Maybe they showed up on 33s and some people are on 43s, and we try to show them a good time while still. That's why we do the live music, and we hang out and have a bonfire and stuff, so that people still get that interaction that they're looking for.
Well, and as you know, it's such a difficult thing defining the level of these trails. And Windrock can literally change overnight. I tell people that all the time. I'm like, we can pre-run it, but depending on the weather overnight, that green can become a black real fast.
And it's difficult too, because there's maybe some guy on 31s who wants to follow the 43-inch tire group, and you have to tell him politely, it's not going to work out for you.
This isn't going to end well. It'll make good content, but it's not going to work out well for you.
They always have such high hopes. Oh, I've done it before. I'm a really good driver.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good of a driver you are. If, there's certain Jeeps that just can't match a well-built crawler on 43s.
And this goes back to talking about the West Coast thing, and of course there's several great apps out there now, and a lot of them use a numbering system, but there's still it's never standardized. You can't trust that this trail that you ran that was a 6 and this one that's rated a 6 are going to be the same level of difficulty on the same day. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, it might have went from a blue to a double black overnight because of the rain.
Yep. Yeah. Matt, if you were we talked about retirement earlier. If you were to retire today, which we know you're not, but if this was it, and the rigs that you've built are the ones that you've built, which one would you want in the museum with the BleepinJeep plaque? If you could only pick one,
Oh man,
that goes in the history museum, and people come through and say, so that's who that BleepinJeep guy was.
I don't think any of my Jeeps are qualified for a museum.
Well, this museum, I'm imagining, is a very progressive museum.
I would say probably the Scorpion Crawler. It's my baby, and if I were going to preserve one and tell my kids not to sell it off, it would probably be that one.
That's cool. As you've built several of these, obviously you've built a lot that you've kept, but I'm sure you've built several that you had to push on down the road. Is that always a kind of a dilemma, or do you know sometimes when you're building one, I'm not going to keep this, I'm going to build this, get my content out of it, and list it?
Luckily, I've been able to keep most of my builds.
Okay.
But there are a few that I really miss, like the FC. I would love to have that thing back someday. Other projects I built solely to give away. There was one year, a couple years ago, where we gave away like 5 Jeeps in 1 year. It was crazy. But those Jeeps, I never get attached to them in the first place. So I know that they're not going to be with me. Because they're kind of earmarked
for giveaway, so I can't get an emotional attachment.
Yeah, but the FC was built for a giveaway, and I still got an emotional attachment to that somehow. It was just a lot of labor and love went into that one, whereas a lot of the other giveaway Jeeps were quicker builds, I'd say.
As you've grown, obviously, I would assume the phone and the email goes off with a lot of sponsorship opportunities, or asking you to promote X product or Y product. And YouTube is plenty full of enough cleverly disguised infomercials of the latest Chinese trinkets. So talk about how you decide what you're willing to associate yourself with and kind of maintain the BleepinJeep authenticity as you partner with different brands.
It's really hard because, especially if you're a new YouTuber, and you get a following quickly, you get approached by so many companies. Like I typically have at least 5 emails a day wanting to sponsor something. And if I were to take those, it would get really bad really fast, because the audience would be like, oh my gosh, this is over the top.
Right.
But typically, I will try to approach the sponsors that I already do business with.
Okay.
And that I already like, and try to foster a relationship with them, since I'm already using their product. So you say, I'm already
spending dollars with you. I'm a believer in what you're doing.
I think that's the best way to do it. There's a couple of times where, a Chinese company or even American company might approach you and say, hey, we've got this XYZ thing. Will you promote it? And you have to look at it and be like, oh, we actually could use that around the shop. Maybe we'll give it a shot. And then the biggest thing is just to be honest with whether it works or not, or whether it's good or not. But I've gotten to the point where I just try not to get sponsored by one-time items. If like this Jeep trailer build that we're doing right now, I approached Summit, and they're going to sponsor all kinds of things on here.
Nice.
And it's going to be, a Summit sponsored build. So I'm not promoting like 50 different items. It's just going to be Summit, which works really great. And they're they're a great company to work with. And I like them, and I have used them tremendously in the past, because they have such fast shipping when you need something really quick, when you're doing build videos like we are. So it's just a great opportunity to work with somebody that you're already doing business with.
I'm a big Summit fan. Fast shipping, and they'll still send you a paper catalog. And as a guy that grew up as a teenager thumbing through those catalogs, I get a sense of nostalgia. Even though I'll go online to buy it, I still like to thumb through the catalog.
I got one yesterday. You can have if you'd
there
like.
There you go.
But
so, Matt, has there ever been any builds that you started that didn't make it to production, didn't make it to YouTube? Were there some ideas that maybe just were a little too outlandish and you said, yeah, I'm gonna cut my losses and scrap this?
We have had one. It was a Suzuki X90 that, for whatever reason, we were going through this wild phase where we were going to try to like destroy vehicles and try to get an audience.
Well, you got
that.
500,000 views off that ZJ video, right?
Right. So we tried to do more of that, and it didn't really work out. And we built a trailer similar to this, not a gooseneck trailer, but we built a trailer and destroyed it. It was a canned ham camper trailer, so we didn't really build it, but we took it behind this Jeep and completely destroyed that. That one did make it to video, but it was just so far off of what our typical was. People didn't enjoy it. And so the problem with doing YouTube is you might film 3 or 4 videos before the first one comes out. So we had also built this X90 Suzuki thing, and we had made this. It was the stupidest idea. I don't know where we came up with this, but we were going to put a banana split in as the motor oil. We painted it like a banana split. It was like banana split themed, cherry on top and everything. We were going to use banana split as the motor oil, and we made the whole video, did that at the end, thinking that we were going to go crazy with it, and it only drove down the road like an 1/8 mile and then blew up, and and then we crushed it, but the whole crusher thing, like we didn't capture it on video, and it just was a disaster, and we scrapped the whole project.
That's a tax write-off in the YouTube world. Yeah.
There's a picture of it that I just posted on Instagram the other day, I think, and somebody was like, "We have to see that video," but it'll never see daylight. It'll never see the light of day. It was terrible.
Speaking of things that don't get filmed, as we're kind of wrapping up here, do you get a chance to go out in the woods with the family or whatnot without a camera anymore? Like, when's the last time that you've hit the trails and you didn't have 3 GoPros with you?
It happens more than you'd think. Probably
okay.
3 or 4 times a year. When some of my friends go riding, I'll just say, you know what? I'm not filming today. I'm just out riding for fun. I won't even bring the cameras with me. And
so you're not tempted to?
Yeah, that way I'm not tempted. But a lot of times that's when the cool stuff happens.
Of course
that's
it is,
when
yeah.
you wish you had the camera. But it's so enjoyable and relaxing to actually get to do what I love without having to film it, because filming does add an aspect of like you're working, right?
Yep.
So even when I'm going to do my favorite hobby, a lot of times I'm still working because I have to point that camera in my face, and I'm the guy who doesn't like I will never be in a Walmart and holding a camera up to my face because I just think it's so weird. So to do that, even
so you can do it all day long in this shop, but when it's out in public, it starts to feel funny.
Yeah, it's just weird being in public pointing a camera at your face. It feels so odd, and people are looking at you like, why is that guy being weird?
No, I think that's good. I think 3 or 4 times a year is impressive, because I ask a lot of people, professionals in the off-road industry, that question, and a lot of them can't remember the last time they went out without a camera.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, and a lot of times too, it's weird because some of the friends that I, wheel with before BleepinJeep, it's they're just friends, and maybe they don't want to be on camera.
Right.
Maybe they don't like that. And so I'll just go out and hang out with them and not film.
Very cool. All right. So we always like to wrap up with some rapid fire questions here. So just the first thing that comes to mind on these. Number 1, Now, we all know you're drinking a vitamin water today. That's good. You're staying hydrated. But I was going to say, we all know Matt's beverage of choice on the trail. But what is your favorite trail snack?
Oh, I'm so busy driving. I don't snack a lot, but probably Funyuns.
Funyuns. Okay, that's a first.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then you got all the finger dust and everything, but you're good with it.
No, you just wipe it on your shirt.
All right. If now I understand that this would be difficult in a lot of your builds, but if you were listening to music and you can only listen to one artist or one album while you're out on the trail for a day, what are you queuing up?
It would probably be Incubus. I don't know. I'm just a 90s, like late 90s, early 2000s music fan.
Okay.
A lot of rock and alternative growing up, so Incubus.
Cool. Yeah, it's easy to go back to what you grew up with. I mean, I think every generation thinks that their teenage music was the best music.
I feel like you get your taste for music right around 16 to 18, and it doesn't change from there.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of us.
It's a good thing I was listening to that and not like something weird when I was 16.
All right. This is a red or yellow, Milwaukee or DeWalt?
Well, as you can see, Milwaukee all the way.
There's kind of a whole Milwaukee shrine over in the corner next to us.
We've even got our own Milwaukee sign. Sponsored by Milwaukee. We've got it all.
There you go. So that's one of those partners that Matt is proud to support. Yeah.
Even well, I do have some DeWalt corded angle grinders, but I think other than that, I have always been a Milwaukee fan even before we were sponsored by Milwaukee. So going back to that, it just makes sense to deal with them.
Manual or automatic on the trail?
I've got to go automatic. I feel like the best way to wheel is to make everything as simple as possible. So if you just have a go pedal and a stop pedal, and
I like this philosophy. Yeah.
I've seen so many people that have like 50 million gauges and buttons, and they're always like looking around. They got their backup camera, and then they run into something because they're fidgeting with too many things.
Yeah, that's never us Lexus guys with a whole slew of switch panels in the truck. Yeah. All right. We've talked about Windrock a little bit. If you could only choose one, because I know there's a lot of choices, favorite trail at Windrock?
Oh man, favorite trail at Windrock. As much as I've done it, it's still probably my favorite is Trail 15, because it's just right off the.
It's right there.
It's right there. It's got everything you could ask for. So it's got rocks, it's got ledges, it's got crevasses, it's got V-notches, and then it's got optional harder lines. It's got everything.
Which, if you don't know, that's where Matt has been filming his Versus.
The Versus
series
was all filmed there. Unfortunately, it's gotten so difficult that we can't take, cheap $1,200 Jeeps up it anymore. So. Well,
let me say this: that Versus series has inspired in our Toyota group, in our group chat. We've got this event coming up, and there's a group buy going together for the $2,000 beater after watching your videos to try to send up 15.
Getting it up 15 now with a $2,000 vehicle is going to be tricky.
Yeah,
even getting it down,
but it'll be fun.
Tricky.
Yeah, yes. All right. Well, again, thank you for letting us come and have this conversation. This has been really good, and I hope the viewers kind of got us to peel the curtain back a little bit and learn more about your story, because it's really incredible and impressive. From 15 years seems like a long time, but I'm sure it doesn't always feel that long ago that you were just a guy showing how to put some ball joints in.
It's really crazy whenever you meet somebody who's like 30 and they say, "Oh man, I've been watching you since I was a kid." And you think, "Oh man, how old am I?"
Well, I had this thought on the way over here to wrap up with. I thought, there's guys that are potentially buying their first XJ now that were not born when you made your first video.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for making me feel old.
You're welcome. All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, folks. It made it.
Yay! It's that sausage.